Mesut Özil. Alexis, vaya mano y el remate a gol de Lacazette. 1-0 Arsenal, Lacazette. Marca el delantero francés.
This is Arsecast Extra.
Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from Gunnerblog. James, goodly morning to you. How was your weekend?
It was good, thanks. Yeah, goodly morning to you too. The goodly mornings just keep on coming. Yeah, all well. How about you?
Yeah, all good. Nothing too strange or startling, nothing too exciting this weekend. Just sort of stayed in and watched some old movies.
How old?
Well, I watched Heat with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino.
That's a great movie.
1995, something like that. Here's a true story. I saw that movie about 6 times between the time it was released and about 2002. I know, I forgot it every single time. I forgot every single detail about it. I think, is it the first movie where Al Pacino really starts to get on his thing?
Yeah.
I think he really does.
So.
It would be like, "Goodly morning," that kind of vibe from Al Pacino. It was good. I felt let down by the ending, but there you go.
Right.
That can happen. And I also watched Highlander.
Oh wow!
Yeah, back in from 1986.
Something. Yeah. It's the same vintage as me.
It doesn't really stand up to. It doesn't hold the test of time. No, not really. I mean, it's quite absurd in places, because you have Sean Connery coming in and doing his whole, "I am Juan Sanchez Ramirez Lobo de la Cruz of the Spanish court. I'm here to..." And you're going, "You're not very Spanish." And of course you have Christopher Lambert, who's a Frenchman, doing the worst Scottish accent anybody has ever heard. And then there's a moment later in the film where he says, the Highlander says to him, "Blah, blah, 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 you Spaniard." And he goes, "I'm not a Spaniard, I'm Egyptian." And you're like, what? What? How the fuck are you Egyptian, man?
I guess that explains the accent, though. It's a perfect Egyptian accent.
Perfect Egyptian, Spanish, Scottish hybrid. But the best part of it was, the Highlander, of course, he lives forever. He's immortal. And he's fallen in love with this woman after he's cast out, and he's fallen in love, and they have a long and happy life together. And of course, she gets old and he doesn't get old. But what they did in the final scene of her life, where she dies because she's just so old and decrepit, they got the actress who was the young actress, who was his young Bonnie bride back in the day, and they just put a grey wig on her. Rather than just why don't you get an older lady to play the part of her dying? But no, they just put a grey wig on her and did drew a few lines on her face to make her look old. But there you go.
It's amazing what they can do, isn't it? It's amazing how they can reproduce the age. In this day and age, they're sort of making De Niro younger and Pacino younger. Back then, stick a wig on someone, that's fine.
That's it. They're old. Grey hair equals old.
Well, listen,
we
all got it then. We didn't question it at the time. Well, I'll have to go back and watch those films. I haven't seen them for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, I would suggest having a few drinks with Highlander because you'll need them.
Sure.
But there you go. So, Arsenal won again.
I know. What's going on here? What's going on here? I'm deeply suspicious of the whole thing. I'll be honest with you.
There's a lot going on in the world at the moment. And, there's a lot of it might make you think this is kind of end times.
Yeah, conspiracy theories abound.
But Arsenal winning 3 games in a row in the Premier League for the first time since February of last year, it's up there. Right, let's talk about it. I mean, it's a weird game because there wasn't a great deal to like about it beyond the result. No. Team selection, the only thing that really raised an eyebrow for me...
I know what you're going to say.
Are you? Do you? You are? It is. I know.
I think it might have something to do with the right-back position.
Correct. At the time, my eyebrow was raised in a quizzical, like...
Just one?
Just one. Like sure. Roger Moore.
Yeah.
I can't do that, by the way. And No,
I can't either. I look like I'm having some sort of fit, I think, when I do that.
And I've got very kind of indistinct eyebrows anyway, so, it would be hard to tell even if I were. But in the cold light of day of a Monday morning, after we've read a David Ornstein update on The Athletic about Hector Bellerin carrying a groin problem that he's being nursed through. You know, he's not being risked. He was on the bench, of course, and he has played recently, but he's being hampered. His recovery from his ACL injury is being hampered by this groin problem. Similar thing happening with Rob Holding, of course. So that explains why it was Socrates over Bellerin. Doesn't necessarily explain why Ainsley Maitland-Niles is not being used at all. I know we seem to have this discussion every week, but you know, every week it seems more and more like there's something really missing from Ainsley Maitland-Niles as far as Mikel Arteta is concerned.
It does, and increasingly I'm sort of the mind that maybe, as much as I say, well, the door's always open for Ainsley, it feels like the door is pretty close to shut. You know, someone certainly pulled it to, as they say. And I think the signing of Cedric Suarez was a big moment for Ainsley Maitland-Niles. And
yeah, when you're signing a cripple,
yeah,
it doesn't really augur well for you.
Signing a guy in a knee brace to basically be ahead of you in the queue, that's not a good sign. So yeah, I found that interesting. I mean, poor old Socrates, he's not a right back, is he, by any stretch of anyone's imagination, even Mikel Arteta's, but he tries manfully in the role.
Yeah, look, I don't think, you know, he's too bad from a defensive point of view.
No.
You know, I think he's quite actually solid there. You know, he doesn't get caught out of position a great deal. I think he could do with a bit of support every now and again. I think there was some moments in the first half where Ceballos was the guy who actually got back to give him a hand, and maybe that was the instruction. So I think from a defensive point of view, you know, he obviously gives you something in the air. He's strong. He's maybe a bit quicker than people think. Sort of like a gigantic rock rolling down a hill. You know, there's a momentum to him once he gets going. But I think where obviously we're a little bit restricted is his attacking potential. Now, you know, he hit the bar with a header. So, you know, when he's in the box, I think he can give us a little bit of something. It's the combination with Pepe on the right-hand side, it's overlapping. He's not going to do that. He's not going to get crosses in. And it does sort of blunt you a little bit from an attacking point of view.
Yes, and I think looking at the fixture list and seeing that we had, you know, 3 games this week, 2 of which away from home, potentially more testing, and knowing that Hector is carrying that injury, I guess leaving him out for this one is excusable. It makes some sense. I think Maitland-Niles will be a more natural replacement, but it seems that he's not met the non-negotiables Arteta set out at the start of his reign.
So, Bernd Leno, in for some criticism after his role in the Olympiacos defeat, because he conceded a corner he didn't really need to concede, and from there we conceded the goal. It's not all on him, but you know he should have done better, etc., etc. We all know that. But you know, in general, this season he has been one of our best players, and he was again on Saturday, called into action very, very early on, a slack pass from Granit Xhaka, and I think there were a few from, not necessarily just from him, but from Ceballos as well. So some passes that went astray, which really could have been punished by a better team. He was good again. He made that save early on. He made another save in the first half. You know, West Ham hit the post early on. They had that chance we'll talk about in a moment with regards to Pablo Mari. But Leno comes out of this game, I think, with as much credit as anyone. In fact, more, obviously. I think he was probably our most instrumental player on the day.
Yes, I mean, I think the thing to say is probably that a better team than West Ham probably win this game against us. I think given the chances that they had, or at least take something, I mean, they really ought to have scored. But Leno was instrumental in keeping that clean sheet, and this was the day he became the 3rd Premier League goalkeeper this season to pass 100 saves, which tells you something about how busy he's been. I think Dubravka of Newcastle and Ramsdale of Bournemouth just pipped him to it, but he's right up there. I think he's still 2nd in the league in terms of how many saves he's made this season.
Wow, I mean, that says a lot, doesn't it? Yeah.
I mean, he's been severely tested, and I mean, rarely more so than in this game. I think in the second half as well, he made a fantastic save, wasn't it? A reflex save from a header,
Yeah, from Antonio, It was that was a really brilliant save, actually. And I think what was great about the save was, not just that he stopped it, but that he was strong enough to kind of slap the ball away a bit and out of danger.
Very true.
Yeah.
He got some distance on it. I mean, Antonio is a handful. He's very quick, very strong, but we owe him quite a lot, really, for some of the chances he missed in the game.
Well, I mean, look, let's talk about Pablo Mari then and his Premier League debut. He was in for Mustafi, who apparently had a thigh injury. He's expected to be fit again. I don't know if he's going to be fit for Wednesday. Is there anything on the official website? Because they just... he's being assessed. Tight right thigh for Shkodran Mustafi, being assessed ahead of Man City. And also in that latest update, Lucas Torreira's recovery process expected to take between 8 and 10 weeks. So that's pretty much season over for him after the ankle injury that he sustained against Portsmouth. But Pablo Mari, there was a moment where... it was in that first half where I think it was Antonio really muscled him off the ball, and then he slightly misjudged the through ball. He slid in to try and get it and didn't get it. The two West Ham players, well, fuck me, we were lucky there. That is the kind of chance that any professional team, any Sunday league team should be taking. The run that the guy made was not great. The pass from Antonio, not great, and we got away with that. But I think it's one of those things that hopefully Mari will learn from in terms of the physicality and the pace of the Premier League. He's done played lots for Flamengo and done very well there, but I suspect that the Premier League is quicker and the players are stronger, and that will be a little bit of a wake up for him.
Yeah, he was caught out in that moment, no doubt about it, and it shows that he's got a bit of growing to do. He's got a bit of improvement to come there. But I thought on the ball he was pretty good in the game. I mean, him and Luiz were, had that balance coming out left and right hand side, and he played a few nice crossfield passes. So I can see the appeal of having the left-sided centre half in there. But I agree that he was tested at points in this, and that's inevitable. I mean, look, his debut was impressive, but it was against Portsmouth, League One Portsmouth. And this is a different level, a different challenge, and something that he's not particularly accustomed to.
No, true. I'm just looking up his stats here on the day. Passing 84.5%. From a defensive point of view, like long passes 3 out of 9. So, that thing we saw against Portsmouth, slightly off in the Premier League, but 9 ball recoveries, 6 passes in the attacking third, which is quite interesting. 2 out of 2 tackles, 8 out of 8 clearances, 5 out of 5 headed clearances, 4 out of 6 aerial duels, 1 block cross. I mean, you mentioned a similarity to Mertesacker when we spoke about him on the last show, and that was really evident to me, actually, in Saturday's game. I don't know if it's because the West Ham players are a bit quicker and faster and stronger than Portsmouth players. I think it might be, but just in terms of how he moves,
his gait is Mertesacker-esque.
It's very Mertesacker-esque. And, I think if there was an area in which Mertesacker had some struggles, it was when, the ball was played inside him on the turn and, you have guys running in behind him. So, it's about reading the game and your positioning and your, using your experience to not find yourself in those positions. So, yeah, I can see the similarities there in a big way.
Well, it'd be interesting if he plays on Wednesday. I mean, that'll be a massive game for him to go to Manchester City, the team who sort of owned him, but ultimately decided he wasn't really good enough for them. If he goes there as a Premier League player, he'll be absolutely desperate to impress.
Sorry, was just having some coffee.
Right.
Right, so look, not a great deal happened in the first half. I think our best chance was that Socrates header, which hit the bar. There was a moment, I think, for Eddie Nketiah. Bukayo Saka found some space down the left and cut inside, made a good pass, and Fabianski made a save. But that was about the only impact that Eddie had. And I don't necessarily want to talk about that from his point of view, because I think we've discussed the concept of strikers and attacking players getting service. Is that something which concerns you a bit? Because, Aubameyang was really quiet. Nketiah was quiet. Pepe was quiet. I know Lacazette got the goal, but it sort of came from an element of good fortune, or it was not as if we cut West Ham open with incisive play. We made the most of a deflection which worked out really well for us. But is that a concern?
Yes, I think it is a concern. I mean, Aubameyang, he never looked like scoring in the game. I have to say, it would have been his 50th Premier League goal, and I was kind of thinking, there you go, that's going to be the story of the day, but it never really happened for him. I thought Saka was maybe sort of the brightest of our attacking players. There's a directness about Saka that I really, really like, and actually, as talented as Nicolas Pepe is on the other flank, I think he could probably learn a bit from, even though Saka is a teenager. Just his first thought is to go towards the goal, and he does it in the most direct and expedient way. And actually, in a funny kind of way, our goal kind of came from that. One of those driving runs from the left-hand side in towards the penalty box, tucked it back for Aubameyang. Then, of course, we get the luck of the deflection, which loops it up in the air. But, I mean, creatively, we had a lot of the ball. Ceballos had a lot of the ball, I thought, in deeper areas, and generally used it pretty well. But when it got to kind of the edge of the penalty box, we sort of got caught in that slight horseshoe thing, of sort of moving around the penalty box without a great degree of penetration.
Yeah, I mean, just to put some of the stats into the mix here, West Ham had 14 shots to our 9. Arsenal completed 530 passes to West Ham's 181. Yeah. So, there's 147 attacking third passes to West Ham's 51. 26 crosses for West Ham to Arsenal's 20. So, in terms of what you're producing based on how much of the ball you have, it is a little bit of a worry. And I know there's a bigger discussion to be had about this, but just, when you look at what West Ham did, not all of those shots, of course, were big chances or anything like it, but certainly there's they were able to dig out more from their far less possession than we did. So I don't know if we're looking for the perfect moment, because there were a couple of moments, weren't there? I think there was one or two for Ozil in particular where you're going, shoot. Just shoot. The chance is there to have a go, and maybe it's not the most efficient chance or shot position that you're ever going to have, but sometimes if you just take a shot from a position, you can get lucky, you can get a deflection, like Aubameyang, for example, which led to the goal. So I wonder if there's just that thing where we have to get out of the mindset of creating the perfect opportunity, or maybe this is in some way instructional from Arteta, because it's kind of the way City play, in a sense, isn't it? In that they will work the ball, and they'll work the ball into a position that you think is good, and they'll keep working it until they find a better opening. So I don't know whether it's just a lack of confidence, or just things not attacking yet or clicking yet from an attacking point of view, or part of the instructions, or maybe all of those things together. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I mean, our shots generally have been relatively meagre under Arteta. Certainly, sort of anecdotally, that's how it's appeared to me, that we haven't taken a ton of shots at goal, but we haven't conceded loads either, and that's why this game was, I think, a worse performance from Arsenal. I thought defensively we were much more open than we have been. When you look at why, there's a change at centre half, there's a change at right back. Lucas Torreira's come out of the midfield. I mean, all these things could have contributed. I just thought West Ham exposed us on the break better than others have, and that swung the balance really. I mean, I sort of have alluded to it a few times, but I thought we were pretty lucky to win this one.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Lacazette said we were lucky. Arteta said, I don't necessarily believe in fortune that much. If our goalkeeper makes saves, it's because he's having a good game. And there's something to that, of course. If a striker scores a load of goals, everyone says he's played well. But if your goalkeeper makes a load of saves, yes, he's played well, but it also means your defence hasn't performed to the level that you want. And I think you're right that we were very uncharacteristically open at times in this game. Not something we've really seen from Mikel Arteta's team, because the organisation, the structure has been there to prevent the kind of chances that West Ham had.
Yeah, and I did think again there was a little small, tiny amount of tinkering in the shape. I mean, Arsenal in possession have generally been in this kind of 3-2-5 system. It seemed to me anyway, with Xhaka dropping in deeper. But in this game, it looked more like a 2-3-5. So you had sort of Luiz and Marie kind of at the very back, then Socrates a little bit ahead of that with Ceballos and Xhaka. And Xhaka actually was... I reckon if you looked at Xhaka's heat map for this game, it would be much more advanced than it has been generally under Arteta. And again, I think that might have contributed to our slight openness at the back. It's tiny things, but it did seem to have an effect.
Interesting. Yeah, maybe we'll check that out. What do you think the impact might be for a player like Xhaka with a left-footed centre-half? Because it feels to me like... You know, if you've got two right-footed centre-halves, as we had in Luiz and Mustafi, who've been playing the last few games, and then you have Xhaka sort of slotting in there, which, of course, allows Saka to push forward on the left, which allows Aubameyang to push more centrally, etc., etc. You know, if you have a centre-half who can do what you're asking Xhaka to do in that situation, it means that he's got to play in a different area of the pitch. And I think probably Xhaka from deeper is a greater asset than Xhaka playing further forward. I mean, there was a couple of moments, maybe it was in the second half, where I'm looking and I'm seeing Xhaka in the kind of inside left channel, high up the pitch, almost on the edge of the box, with his back to goal, and you're thinking, well, what the fuck is he doing there? I mean, that's not his game.
No, a couple of times I think he almost did get into the box. I mean, he was certainly like at the D on the outside, and that's not his game, and it's not what he's been asked to do under Arteta thus far. And I think you're right. The introduction of Marie, who is used to sort of covering a left back's spot as a left-sided centre half, and also has the ability to bring the ball out on the left side. I'm not going to say it makes Xhaka's role redundant, but it forces him into a slightly different one, and one that is probably less suited to him. So yeah, it was kind of interesting. I think there was a bit of an evolutionary step from Arteta in the team, a kind of step forwards, but with that step forwards there was a bit of cost too and a bit of adjustment, and I'm not sure we looked quite as coherent as when we sort of performed the plan A that Arteta laid out as soon as he came in. So look, we got the goal through Lacazette, and a big goal for him, obviously, because his contribution to our Premier League season has been meagre, it would be fair to say, this season. But that's a couple of games now in the last couple of weeks where he scored the winning goal. He got the goal away at Olympiacos. Ultimately, that didn't pan out the way we wanted in the second leg. But, he got the goal there yesterday, or on Saturday as well. An assist from Mesut Ozil. Something that we haven't seen anywhere near often enough this season. I think that's only his second assist, and we've been looking for more from Lacazette, and we've been looking for more from Ozil, not unreasonably, I don't think, and the pair of them combined to help us win the game. So if we're looking for positives from it, those contributions are positive. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of surprising almost to reiterate the fact that Lacazette now has 3 goals in his last 4 appearances, because he's not a player in form, not a player who's playing particularly well, but he is making contributions now, which is a positive thing. And I know we mentioned about Ozil having chances to shoot and not taking them, but in this instance he got it absolutely right, didn't he? He laid it on for Lacazette and tucked it away. And of course we had the whole VAR thing afterwards, which was I don't know if you had the same pictures as us, but they were really looking for a way to make that goal offside.
The moment that they disallowed it, I was thinking, okay, well. And then they said, well, VAR is going to check it. And they showed that very first replay where they pause it and you can see where Ozil is when the ball is played, right?
Yeah.
I looked at it and went, he's onside. I could see that he was onside. And like you, I sat there for however long it was. I wonder how long it was, actually. Probably over 2 minutes, at least.
Oh, it was a good long time, yeah.
Yeah, and they are drawing lines here, there, and everywhere. Is one of his pubes offside? Is his toe offside? Is his little finger offside? It's just... Look, it's a weird thing, isn't it? Because without VAR, we don't get that goal and maybe we don't win that game.
Sure.
But the experience of it is it's just soul destroying. Particularly when they drag it out and out and out and out, and you know from the very first replay that it's a good goal. So I don't really understand why it is they are doing it the way that they're doing it. Why can they not make that decision in 15 seconds, 20 seconds when it is obvious? Like, is there an edict to say you must use this technology to the full extent of what's available to you? Draw the lines, do the thing, do the check mark, draw the lines again. Okay, let's reverse it. Do this, do that. Yeah, if it's just bullshit. It's bullshit the way it's implemented.
So I've said many times I can't really stand VAR, but I imagine what they will argue is, given that they're overturning an on-field decision, they have to make it really clear that they've properly interrogated it so that every possible avenue has been explored, because once they change it, they can't go back. That said, your eyes tell you, as soon as you see that replay, like you've said, he's onside. And so, and leave aside, the fact that fans in the ground have no pictures, they don't know what's going on.
They don't put anything on the big screen, no?
They put VAR checking.
Right, but you don't see in the ground, you don't see the lines being drawn and the
No. I think that's probably for the best in this instance, because
Why?
Can you imagine, people would have been going crazy, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but maybe they would be right to go crazy. And maybe that's what they fucking need to do.
Maybe that pressure.
Yeah, exactly. And what isn't the other thing about the offside flag going up? I thought there was a directive that if there was a doubt, don't put the flag up and let VAR deal with it.
Well, I agree, and I think it's really strange to put the flag up in that situation, because obviously, I think the goalkeeper would have an argument to say, well, you put the flag up. I sort of wasn't really paying attention. You put the flag up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
As a defender, you'd be like, well, the flag went up, so I sort of stopped. It's a really odd one. That I think it doesn't really make sense. When goals are scored with the flag up and then overturned, like in this instance, it feels a bit wrong to me, because it feels like they've scored almost after the player's stopped. Do you know what I mean?
Play the whistle, though. Play the whistle.
I guess play the whistle. But look,
can you play the flag?
You play the flag. I'll take it. I'll take the goal. I'll take Aubameyang's goal at Old Trafford. I would give them back in a heartbeat to get rid of this. Genuinely, I really, really would. It doesn't matter to me enough. The live experience is so much worse as a consequence of it.
That's my big. I think it's a very different experience when you're in the ground and when you're sitting at home, because at home you're just sort of sitting on your sofa and you're
Sure. And you've got something to watch.
Yeah, your first world problem is that, look at these cunts drawing these fucking lines. And you're sitting on the sofa and you've got a beer or whatever it is and you're watching the game. But if you're in a stadium and it is, the impact that it has on the match-going fans, and it opens up this debate again, there's no... I'm not going to go down the road of one, you're a better fan if you're in the ground or if you're not. But, what's great about sport is the live experience, and we tune into sport because we want to watch the football, but the crowd and the atmosphere and all that plays a part in what makes sport enjoyable as a viewing experience. And if you're taking something so fundamental away from it for the people who are inside the grounds, I don't really see what the benefit to the sport is. VAR is basically a tool for broadcast entertainment. That's all it is. It's not really about getting more decisions right because they want, games to be perfect. It is a lucky box at the end of a game show. Open up this box and you could win £1 million, or, you've got to drink a glass of scorpion juice. What's it going to be? That's what it is. And I think the benefits to the actual sport itself and to the live event and to the game of football are not sufficient for us to maintain it or to be to invest in it. I think the Pandora's box is open. There's no going back now, but You know, in this iteration of VAR is it's absurd. And I know we benefited from it. I would say this if we didn't as well. So...
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing. I want to have a consistent position. To me, as someone who loves the experience of going to a game live, it feels a bit like going to a gig and they've applied auto-tune on all the mics. And it's like, well, it's perfectly in tune now. Isn't that what you want? And it's like, no, that isn't what I want. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway. What did you make of the other VAR moment in the game, which was the Lacazette possible penalty tussle? Did you see that one?
Yeah, I saw that, and I think if they'd gone back and if they'd awarded something for it, I think it would have been a free kick because it started outside the area, didn't it? Yeah. I don't understand how hauling a guy around the neck as you're running with him isn't a foul, though. You know, I don't get it. But maybe that's another thing that they don't want to open up, you know, the grappling and all those kind of things. I mean, it's one of the curiosities, isn't it, that we do not, or very rarely, see VAR check all the pushing and pulling and shoving and everything else that goes on from corner kicks and free kicks. We don't see any real focus on that. And I think if you were to go through a game, you would probably find, by the letter of the law, countless incidents that should be free kicks, one way or the other. It's how you decide, of course. Like, is you know, where do you give the free kick? Is it the defender who's fouling the attacker or the attacker who's fouling the defender beside him? You know, which one do you give? But I thought it was so blatant that we should at least have had a free kick. But there you go.
I think you're right. It would have been a free kick. Although I think they can only check the penalty. I think that's what's happening there. They can only check for a penalty. So they're sort of judging that and going, well, maybe it's free kick, but we can't give that. It's one of those as well because when Lacazette retaliates a little bit right at the end, it kind of gives the referee an out, doesn't it? Or the VAR an out. It enables them to go, well, it's 50-50, even though it's, you know, 80-20 for the vast majority of it. Anyhow,
look, we got there in the end. We got 3 points. We got to the magical 40-point mark, which is great.
We are staying up.
And I don't know what more we can say about that particular game. I mean, in the context of the weekend, it made the Premier League table look quite nice for about 24 hours.
Sure, yeah.
We were close enough to Manchester United and a little bit closer to Chelsea, but the two of them won their games yesterday. City going down 2-0 to United and Everton getting an absolute thrashing from Chelsea. So, you know, it looks a bit more difficult. The gaps are a bit wider. I mean, not impossible or insurmountable, but certainly a little less pretty than it was at 5 p.m. on Saturday evening.
Yeah, I think it will be difficult. I really do, because I think even between Chelsea and United and us, you know, you've got teams like Wolves, Sheffield United, who will accumulate plenty of points, I would imagine. And some of our fixtures, you know, we've got to go to Man City Wednesday, you know, I don't know. But we are just 1 point behind Spurs, which I am enjoying, with a game in hand too. Yeah,
that's good. That's always good. And hopefully there will be a St. Totteringham's Day this season. And it looks like Mourinho is you know, heading much more quickly to to the...
Not so much throwing Ndombele under the bus as strapping him to the tracks and running the bus directly over him.
Yes, that was good. It normally takes him like a season and a half to get there, but you know, he's going in, 2-footed all the way from his early days at Tottenham. So
my favourite thing he said was did you see after the midweek game, he said the board must decide whether they wish to win the Burnley game or the Leipzig game.
The board have to decide.
Something like that, yeah. He was like, you know, I will speak with the board and they must choose. He basically said, I'm going to throw one of these games and it's up to you. You've got to decide now which it's going to be, because I guarantee you I can't win both of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, they got to Leipzig on Tuesday, which they're 1-0 down in. And then on Sunday, they host Manchester United, revitalised by their win over Manchester City. So they've still got Sheffield United away in a couple of weeks' time.
Not bad.
They've still got us to play at White Hart Lane in April. So, yeah, I've got my eyes fixed firmly on Mourinho at this point.
Okay.
Anything else is a bonus to me.
Yeah, let's drive that fucker crazy. That would be good. So, I mean, just one final question before we take a break and go into part 2, because there are some interesting questions about stuff and things. What do you think would be Mikel Arteta's main takeaway from this game, from the 1-0 win over West Ham? If there were one thing you looked at and thought he needs to have a solid think about that, what would it be?
Personally, I think that I've seen Danny Sparks come in for a lot of praise following the game, and I understand why. He was very busy on the ball and he was kind of instrumental in everything we did. I came away from this game thinking our midfield is a puzzle that really needs solving, and I don't think, we've said all season the balance isn't quite right, and I still think the balance isn't quite right, and that was my sort of big takeaway. What about you?
I think the right-hand side.
Okay, yeah, that's a good shout as well.
I know, obviously, he's got an issue there with Bellerin, but I think it's not that we're ignoring an area of the pitch completely, but we're not doing enough to, again, if we want to talk balance, we attack a lot down the left-hand side. We overlap down the left-hand side. We so very rarely overlap down the right. And it was, it was interesting against Portsmouth that we saw that from Reece Nelson, and it produced for us, that ability to overlap down that side of the pitch. I think it would be beneficial for Pepe. If a fullback is being pulled out of position and Pepe is coming back inside on his left foot, if that fullback isn't like standing right in front of him, maybe he can do more with the ball. So I think we've got to think about how we use the right-hand side, how we can use that right-hand space to attack with, and maybe what the balance of the team is in that regard. So
I can fix it, by the way. Shall I tell you how to fix it?
Go on.
Well, I don't know, but I was thinking about this during the game as well. So basically, this team is kind of a 5 and a 5. So it's like a 2-3-5 or 3-2-5 in attack. So it's 5 more defensive players and 5 more attacking players, right? And that lineup usually across the front is something like Saka, Aubameyang, Nketiah or Lacazette, Ozil, Pepe. And obviously it means the right back doesn't overlap, doesn't go forward, doesn't get outside Pepe. I think that Arteta's unlikely to shift from that, because all Guardiola's teams, all the best teams in the world, have that kind of 5-man forward line, because it gives you spread, it gives you width. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be comprised of the 5 players playing those positions. So Pepe, you would more naturally say, if I said to you which of those 5 positions most suits Pepe, I think most people would say not the extreme right-hand side, but the one in, like Aubameyang does from the left, sort of coming inside and having a bit more flexibility and ability to go in the middle. Now, of course, you're then like, well, I'd love an overlapping right back, so that you then have something that's kind of mirrors what you're doing on the left and a bit of tandem play on that side. So I think that Ozil is kind of the issue here, because, accommodating him kind of prevents you from creating that overlap on the right. I think if you replaced him with a more like a number 8 style midfielder, who'd be one of the deeper 5, as if you will, and you had an overlapping right back, then I think suddenly your team shape, it's more, I guess it's more, what's the word when something's mirror image? Symmetrical, I guess.
Yeah.
Not that I'm sure that necessarily matters, but I think it just suddenly opens up the pitch in a much more interesting way. And that's not to sort of be particularly critical of Mesut Ozil. I just feel like maybe we are accommodating him in a way that's not helping the shape of the side.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the fact that you've got 2 left-footed players sort of playing out there together who are both naturally inclined to come back inside makes your team very narrow in itself. And actually, I was going, do we have too many left-footers in the team? It occurred to me just on Saturday, because we had Pablo Mari, we had Saka, we had Xhaka, we had Ozil, we had Pepe. I'm not saying that there's necessarily anything wrong with left-footed players, of course, but I just wonder if you're looking for more balance in the team. We were a little bit too left-foot heavy, particularly over that side. I think, Ozil and Pepe, I'm not saying they cancel each other out, but they don't really seem to do much beyond pass the ball to each other, those little layoffs, and then one of them shuffles back inside and plays it into midfield. They don't necessarily combine. I know they've had moments where it's happened, but in general, they don't really give you what you would like from an attacking point of view. So again, we might talk about who's the future and who isn't, and whether that informs your decision making.
I basically think that extreme right position on the sort of front five should be filled by either a Nelson-esque right-footed forward or an overlapping right back who is right-footed as well. And I it does beg the question though: are we in a position? Have we got a right back to do that Arteta's willing to use? I mean, given that Bellerin's carrying an injury, I suspect that's played partly into the decision to sort of give him a slightly more conservative role and not ask him to do box-to-box sprints for 90 minutes. So it's tricky. But I agree that in the sort of mid-term, that needs solving, definitely.
All right. On that note of balance and symmetry, we will take a break and come back with part 2, which, if we're going to do this right, will be exactly the same length as part 1. So join us for your questions and more right after this. Welcome back to part 2 of the Arsecast Extra, in which we answer the questions that you sent to us on Twitter at GunnerBlog and at Arseblog on the Arseblog Facebook page, facebook.com/the Arseblog, and also on the Arseblog Discord chat server, which you get access to if you are an Arseblog member on Patreon. A question that popped up quite a bit, James, over the weekend was, in the wake of a win, which wasn't necessarily the most convincing performance, there were sort of parallels drawn with the 22-game unbeaten run that Unai Emery went on, where, we were winning, but the performances and the stats suggested that, we couldn't maintain it. That proved to be the case, etc., etc. So we have some questions. Darren Michael, for example, at Darren Michael, various in-game stats appear similar to the Emery 22-game unbeaten run. Should this be of concern? Also, let me see here. I had one. From Ali Inayat, who's at _Inayat, who says, in your post-match coverage, you talked about the results under Arteta being better than Emery despite performances being patchy. Is this not the same as the start of Emery, where he had a long unbeaten run? It feels different, but what do you think?
I think it's an important thing to talk about because, we don't want to fall into a trap where we're sort of just nicer about Arteta's team because, I don't know, we like his haircut more or something. I think there is a qualitative difference between these performances. I mean, maybe not from the unbeaten run, but certainly from what we were seeing from Arsenal at the start of this season. They were not even dominating possession. They were surrendering possession. They were on the back foot for the majority of the game. They were the side looking to break and make the most of the limited possession they had. I think that has changed as a dynamic within our games. I think we've exhibited more control under Arteta. We've basically behaved more like a big team, a big club, and I know that that's something you wrote about this weekend.
Yeah, I liked what Arteta said afterwards. Is the idea, he can't have looked at that game and thought, yes, that was exactly what I want from my team. But his remarks, his comments, big teams find a way to win, were his exact words. And I like that, reinforcing the message to the players that, this is Arsenal. This is a big club. It's a long way from where we want it to be. It's a long way from where it should be. And, we all know the reasons why and what we've got to do to get back there, etc., etc. But I always felt like with Emery that for whatever reason, he never understood the stature of Arsenal. And I don't know how you can be a football person, a football manager, somebody who was, existed in the world at a time when Arsenal, were winning doubles and winning titles and, moving to a big new stadium, etc., etc. The purported ambition of Arsenal has always been big. Our ability to get there and to fulfill those ambitions has been, in question and problematic over the last number of years. So I never quite understood why Emery didn't get what Arsenal should be or was supposed to be, and certainly some of his decisions, some of his team selections, the way he would get his team to play, the focus on the opposition, all of those things sort of fed into this kind of inferiority complex, which I guess is just part of Emery's his character or his nature, right? Some people are like that in general, and I don't mean that to be critical of him. That's who he is. But I like what Arteta said about that okay, this wasn't good enough, but we're a big team. You want the players to believe that. You need the players to believe that if you're going to set certain standards, you can't just be meek after a result like that. You can acknowledge that you've got things to work on, but you can also reinforce a message that, come on, we're a big club and we should win these games, and I think as well, there's something about the context of this. Of course, Arteta took over at a very difficult time. He'd no pre-season. There's been a lot of stuff for him to deal with in terms of injuries and the schedule and all of those things, which I think is very different from Emery, because Emery had, full pre-season twice. He had transfers, he had players brought in that obviously he wanted and transfers that he approved, and his football wasn't great. And I think we also have to step back and remember that we've had lots and lots of games like this, not just under Emery, under Arsene Wenger as well. Even when Arsenal were a much, much better team than they are right now, there were games that we really had to scrap out a 2-1 win, a 2-1 win over Charlton or something like that. Football is difficult, so I think we kind of have to remember that games can be won in trying circumstances. Obviously, you want to see underlying improvement in performances and all those kind of things. I think in general, we have under Arteta, and that's why, to me, it feels different than it did under Emery.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, it's funny, Arteta, what he says sometimes, if you broke it down, if you looked at it on the page, it's not altogether different from things other managers might say, but there's so much more. It means you believe it so much more from him. I don't know why. I think that's just the quality of his personality. And I think also, as much as you look at the tactical things and the results, I do think that he is trying to implement a cultural shift at Arsenal, and he seems to be achieving that. I think Emery tried to do the same thing, but he never really felt especially successful. But Arteta, because he has these non-negotiables, because he's prepared to really draw a line and mean it, I think it is having an effect. And so I think there are almost bigger things at play than results and performances. But look, this wasn't a good performance, and I'm not going to sit here and tell anybody it was. It was, we were fortunate to win this match. But like you, I kind of feel like there's something attitudinal occurring, which is positive.
Yeah.
But I also am aware that Arteta hasn't had a pre-season, and that if they look like Emery's team, well, it is Emery's team. I mean, with the exception of Pablo Mari and Cedric Suarez, it's all the same
Who
players,
hasn't played.
Yeah. So, it's the same group of players without a pre-season. I think there are inevitably going to be some parallels. But there are still enough positive signs for me. I wrote about this morning, but I was reading about looking at Guardiola's first season at Manchester City, which Arteta was there as his assistant. And, I think they finished third. They went out of the Champions League to Monaco. People were queuing up to say, what's this guy doing? It's not going to work. It's going to take him. It's going to be impossible for him to implement his plans in England. And the next season, they accumulated 100 points, won the Premier League. Now, I'm not saying, of course, that's not going to happen. But when you are trying to enact a big shift in the way a team thinks, the way a team behaves, the way a team plays football, inevitably that will take time. And I do think that we have to balance our expectations against the need for patience. That's basically the game for us as supporters at the moment.
Exactly. The reality of where we were. You know, the old, you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. And, you know, it was a shambles. It was a shambles when Arteta took over. I mean, there's just no way of escaping that and no way of not referencing that in the context of what we're doing right now, barely a couple of months after he took the job. So I think, you know, if we're having these kind of discussions in a year's time, if we're not seeing any marked improvement, then, you know, there's a reasonable and rational discussion to be had about that. But for now, I think we just kind of have to be pleased when we can scrap out a win in a game like this on a day which doesn't really go for us from a performance point of view.
I'll be intrigued to see what happens on Wednesday, because I'll be honest, I expect Arsenal to lose that game, as we often lose against the big teams away from home.
Okay, well, I've got a couple of questions about this, so let's go with there. We have one from Facebook. From Mats Berglund, who says, what is our best tactic to beat City? And from the Discord, from Juran, he says, as Arteta will be managing against City, a team that he's been an active part in coaching this season and who are still under the same coaching team, how big an advantage would this be for us going into Wednesday? Or will we see some serious tactical mind games from Pep and his team?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. What I was about to say was, this will be a fascinating litmus test of, I don't necessarily think Arsenal, they should go there and get a result. But if you think about the Manchester City game at the Emirates Stadium, where Arteta was on the bench for City, he met with Arsenal that night and became the manager sort of soon after. And he spoke in his opening press conference about how low it made him feel to see the place Arsenal were in for that fixture, how dejected the players looked, how the club looked kind of bowed under the pressure of all the problems they were facing. I do think we go to Manchester City now, just a few months later, with a very different trajectory. And I'm intrigued to see how that manifests on the field. I'm also very, very interested to see how Guardiola and Mikel kind of face off. I mean, Guardiola does have a tendency to pull out interesting tactical plans when he thinks it's necessary. I mean, he did it in the Champions League the other week.
I mean, do you think that's something Arteta will be thinking about? It'll be like, what is Pep going to do? Is he going to try and second guess what Pep is going to do, or is he going to be a bit more focused on what he can get from his team? Like, wonder.
For the most part, go on.
No, I just wonder what the mindset will be, because I think one of the things that I've liked under Arteta is the idea that he is more focused on what his team do rather than the opposition. But because of the proximity to Pep and because of how well he knows the players, the temptation to kind of use that insider knowledge, if you like, must be pretty strong.
Yeah, if there's ever a game he's going to be, sucked into that way of thinking, surely it's this. And also, I mean, there's another kind of added ingredient to it, which is that Guardiola reportedly effectively gave Arteta the keys to the Man City team for a match against Arsenal not too long ago. So he's kind of been on both sides of this tactical debate. I think my hunch is that he's not going to dramatically mix things up. I think he is going to stick to his guns and stick to his gunners, as it were, and play his Arsenal team his way at Manchester City, at the Etihad. Not going to look to do anything drastically different. But it's, that's just a hunch. But I just feel like you say, that has basically been his approach from the get-go.
Bit of a worrying one, obviously, facing Man City. Anyway, they're such a good team, but having lost to Derby,
it's not the result that we wanted, is it?
No, it really isn't, because you are under such pressure to bounce back from, imagine if it were us playing somebody and we just lost to Tottenham. Everybody is looking for a response, from the players, not just in terms of the performance, but in terms of the attitude, the motivation, what you show on the pitch, how committed you are, all of those things. You've got to make up for what is kind of the worst result of your season in a way.
Yeah, they will be desperate to avenge that result. And I think had they won that game, they might be looking at this one thinking, well, we've got a lot of fixtures coming up. We've got Real Madrid on the not too distant horizon. They might have taken their eye off the ball. That focus will be absolutely steelily set on this Arsenal game now. And look, I can't lie, as encouraged as I am by what Arteta has done, this is not a fixture where we have generally fared well.
Is it a, in terms of, is there any pressure on us?
Maybe not.
I can't. You look at the Premier League table and you think, well, even a point could be really valuable come the end of the season. So it's not a game you can write off or anything like it. But is this a game that if it doesn't go our way, we should be really unhappy about? Of course, the context of the game and how the result pans out, whatever that result might be, plays a part in how you think about it, of course. But on paper, if you look at them and you look at us and you look at where we are and where they are and everything else, I don't think there's any realistic expectation that we can go to Man City and win. Look, football is strange and weird, and strange things happen all the time, and weird results happen. So you never know. But if you were putting your car keys on it, you wouldn't be that confident. You'd be driving home.
No, and maybe people will be kind of a bit revolted by the heresy of what I'm about to say, but. No, I was going to say, I think I'm so unconfident of us winning this match that almost what I'm looking for is things other than that. I'm kind of looking for Arsenal to go to this ground and not play within themselves, not play in a manner that's sort of clearly inhibited or like they're just there to get a pasting or just do damage limitation. I'd love to see Arsenal go to this ground and say, look, how can we take the game to Manchester City when we have the opportunity? I would kind of love to see a bit of a different approach, because we lose these matches. So trying something different and the team being committed to that and playing with some measure of belief would probably feel like progress. But look, they may surprise me. I mean, if they do, it'll be absolutely tremendous, because like you say, even 1 point could have a pretty big influence on the league table come the end of the season. Could do. Right, your question. Let's have this question from Rama Krishan on Twitter at RamsArsenal21. And Rama says, what do you think on Willian as a right wing option? He might come for free, but are we going to pay his wages? Do you think this would hinder the development of Nelson, Pepe, etc.? I wrote about this today, actually, on the blog. So if you want to have a little read about it, head over to Arseblog.com. Look, I think Willian is a good player. Yeah, he is a good player. He is a good player. And he's plenty of Premier League experience. And, that's it. But Arsenal spent £72 million on a right winger last summer. And that's not a transfer we can afford to just write off. We have to try and make that work. We've also got Reece Nelson in there. Willian is also 31 years of age. 32 in August, I believe. Until then, though, James. Of course, he remains 31. That's how it works. It feels to me a bit like maybe it's 2 and 2 put together and people getting 5 because of his agent. His agent is obviously Kia Joorabchian, who, as we know, is fairly influential now in the corridors of power at Arsenal. He is very close to Edu. He's close to Raul Sanyehi. He is the agent of Cedric, who was brought to the club in January despite being patently unfit. That's a little bit of a worry for me in terms of the agent influence and what have you. Of course, Kia was in the director's box on Saturday to watch Arsenal. Sure. That's nice, isn't it? That's a nice place to be if you're an agent. He had his own box for years, so it's nice that he's now moved over to the director's box. He's been upgraded for all his loyalty, for putting in the money. Look,
I don't dislike Willian as a player. I just would worry that that's a transfer that's happening for the wrong reasons and would be at the expense of other options that we need to maybe pursue.
Do we need a player like that? That's what I'm trying to work out. I mean, I'm not sure we do, given Pepe, Nelson, Ozil probably not going anywhere, Saka, Martinelli. It's not an area screaming out for attention.
No, I don't think so. I mean, look, you could make a good case for, putting him in our team now. Would he make us a little bit better or have more of an impact than some players? Maybe he would. Again, he's a decent player, but I think if we're looking at this Arsenal team and we're looking at rebuilding and all the difficult decisions that are going to come with that, I'm not sure throwing a whack of money at a 31-year-old is really the right strategy. Like, it doesn't feel like it would be like if you're sitting down right now and you're the transfer team and you're the head of football and you're saying, what do Arsenal really need, this summer? I'd say Willian is pretty low down the list.
Yeah, I mean, I think a Brazilian footballer who's played for Shakhtar and then Chelsea, I think we can assume his wage demands are going to be substantial. Listen, I don't completely hate it because I think in our transfer strategy there is going to be room for like the odd free transfer signing so that we don't spend loads on transfer fees for everybody.
Yes.
Because I just don't think we can afford to do that. But equally, you wouldn't want to be seeing him be given a long contract, would you? Given that he's 32, in the summer. So yeah, and I don't think it's an area where we're desperately in need. And if you told me, Mesut Ozil's going to go and we want like an experienced creative player, I'd be like, okay, maybe. But the way I see it, I don't think Mesut Ozil is going to go. So I just worry about filling that gap up. What about this question? Speaking of other options in sort of those parts of the pitch, Luke London on Twitter says, what has Martinelli done? Hasn't seemed to put a foot wrong, but Arteta seems to prefer Willock or Eddie as a sub when Martinelli has been so dangerous. It really frustrates me.
I don't know. I thought he was really good against Portsmouth. The effort and the work rate that he put in was fantastic. Nearly scored a goal again. That Nelson cross. I don't know. I mean, I think Arteta seems to be quite wedded to the idea of Aubameyang on the left and a striker, whether it's Nketiah or Lacazette, playing centrally. He doesn't seem keen or willing at this point to play Aubameyang as a central striker, which would open up the left-hand side for Martinelli more than anyone else, wouldn't it? Because if Aubameyang is playing centrally, it's not going to be Nketiah, it's not going to be Lacazette. It could be Saka if you get Tierney back. But the option then is Martinelli on that left-hand side. I just assume that he is seeing things in training and judging the development of a young player and maybe thinking he's not quite ready for consistent Premier League action. I genuinely don't know. I'd love to hear what he has to say about it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, is it as simple as he kind of regards Martinelli and Aubameyang as operating from the same space in attacking terms, and Aubameyang doesn't come off because he's too good?
I mean, we saw over the weekend like a lot of people saying, well, look, this is another example of why Aubameyang should be playing as our central striker. But I wonder what sort of a game would he have had if he played there? Would it have been much different? If you're not getting any service, whether you're cutting in from the left or whether you're central, if you're not getting service in either of those positions, how much different would it be for Aubameyang? And look, I think there's a good case to be made for playing him as a central striker, and I personally would like to see it for a little while. But again, maybe the reluctance to do that is because he doesn't quite feel an 18-year-old is ready to play week in, week out in the Premier League, and that might be the crux of it.
Yeah, and I think Martinelli, look, he has massively exceeded all expectations this season, and his goal-scoring form, particularly in the Europa League and the Cup games, was fantastic in the first half of the campaign. But I also think that creates a tendency to assume that he is just ready to do that now, week in, week out. And I actually think when we look at his recent performances, that's not necessarily the case, and there have been games where he's played and not been massively effective. I mean, I'm having to remind myself now, but he played away at Olympiacos. He played 90 minutes at Burnley, and he didn't have a massive impact in those matches. So I think it's kind of understandable that Arteta will be like, well, look, we don't have to throw him in every single match. As for preferring Joe Willock, I do just think that's a positional thing. I think that's him looking to add legs and athleticism in midfield. I think it's the Aubameyang thing principally, that he sees them as kind of not rivals but contenders for the same spot, and when you're in a game you basically want Aubameyang on the field, don't you?
Ashley Moss says, what are your thoughts on Mikel looking like he's going to give Mkhitaryan a chance? Surely with the wages he's on and the fact we could get a fee for him, we should be looking at selling him.
Well, can I answer your question with a question?
Yeah.
Because JJG, who's at JJG AFC, says, does Arteta say nice things about senior players to be diplomatic / hold his cards to his chest? Or does he really intend to keep them? Ozil, Xhaka, Mustafi, Mickey, Laka, all gone this summer, in my opinion. And while I don't necessarily agree that he'll be quite as ruthless as that this summer, I do think there's a degree to which he manages egos and big players exceptionally well, and he creates a perception that everyone has an opportunity to impress him. But I'm sure beyond that, he has opinions. He says the right thing basically a lot of the time.
Yes. Yeah.
And I would say this Mkhitaryan instance is another example of him going, who knows what's going to happen this summer? Maybe I will have Mkhitaryan back here. I don't want him back here unmotivated and feeling like I think he's got no shot. Do you know what I mean? So he's just saying the obvious thing.
I think it is. Look, he's been a player very recently, so he knows the dressing room and he knows players and he knows egos and he knows how to... He seems, it's, again, early stages, but he does seem to have decent man management skills, and that was something I think that was evident when he was captain as well. People talked to, the other players talked a lot about Arteta and what a good guy he was in the dressing room and what kind of an influence he was. I think there's just, it's a practical thing to say about Mkhitaryan. Like, what do you say if someone says, are you going to give Mkhitaryan a chance? You don't say no. No,
of course,
because he's got a year left on his contract, and we can't do anything other than sell him. Or you can't say no. I don't really think he's a very good player, so that's why he says yes. I've always rated him. I've always liked him. Something like that. The reality is, what we did last summer with Mustafi was like we told everyone that A, we didn't want him, and B, the reason we didn't want him was because he was so terrible. Everyone could see it. It kills the market for a player. So, you've got to try and maintain as much value in a player who's got 1 year left on his contract as possible. I think Arsenal will absolutely sell Mkhitaryan this summer. I think they'll take whatever they can get for him. And I think what Arteta has done is just ensure that, when it comes down to it, potential suitors aren't saying, well, this guy's a completely busted flush. He's shit. Yeah. They don't want him. So what the fuck are we? We're not going to pay very much for him, if anything at all. So you kill the demand for the player, and you also kill his value, and that's all that is to me.
I completely agree. And what would it mean if he came out and said no, he's finished here? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Who would that help? Nobody.
Okay, I've got a question here.
Oh, go on.
It comes from Phil, who's at Dublunar, and this is a bit more serious. He's talking about the coronavirus, and he says, given the impact this virus is having on sport and that it's unlikely to pass soon, have you considered that next season could be entirely behind closed doors? Sorry for the grim question, but not even next season. it seems almost inevitable that this season is going to see games played behind closed doors. If you don't or aren't already aware, Wednesday's match between PSG and Borussia Dortmund is in the Champions League is being played behind closed doors. We've seen what's going on in Italy, matches being played behind closed doors. There's no large gatherings of people, so yeah, what do you think this is going to happen, or how it's going to impact our season? You don't have to go full Jurgen Klopp on me here and tell me that you're not an expert on the virus. We know that. Yeah, we know that. And we're not making out that we're in any way experts on the virus, but just talking about what the impact might be on sport and Arsenal and football, because, that's what we're all watching.
Yeah, well, we should hear more today because the British government have got a Cobra emergency meeting where they're going to decide the next steps really for tackling this virus. Look, the more I read about this and the more I learn about it, the more surprised I am that measures have not been taken yet to prevent some of these large-scale public gatherings. I mean, I was at the football on Saturday at the Arsenal game, and it was kind of mad to think, there's 60,000 people here. There's a 2-week incubation process for this virus. We don't know how many people are carrying it. We don't know how many could potentially be spreading it. And of course, I completely understand people who feel that people are overreacting, and I'm sure a degree of overreacting is happening. I don't know. We do necessarily need to stockpile quite as much toilet paper.
Yeah. How many rolls have you got?
I'm actually surprisingly low, so I'll be the man desperately wandering the streets, screaming, please.
As far as I can see, there's none left.
Yeah, I know. There's some leaves on some plants in the garden, so there's always that option. But
duck leaves.
But there is a kind of weird thing happening in Britain where, I mean, in the classically British way, there's very much that sort of thing of like, stuff all this nonsense. We're hardy Brits. We'll get on with it, and it won't affect us, kind of thing. We're still going to handshake. We're still going to hug. And I think I've been drawn into that too for a while, and I hold my hands up to it. But I think that's born of the idea that, like, most healthy people who could trap this virus will be fine. But I think that that's a bit of an indictment of a way of thinking. It's vulnerable people who we should be thinking about.
Correct.
In this situation.
Correct.
And if it's a 1 in 100 death rate, I mean, everybody knows somebody who will be seriously vulnerable, be it because they're, over 60 years old, apparently, which isn't very old, or be it because they have, asthma or some kind of other respiratory condition that will make them super vulnerable to this virus. I just think those are the people we have to do our utmost to protect. You're not washing your hands for you. You're washing your hands for those people.
Yes.
I mean, you should be washing your hands anyway. Let's be clear about that. But
sure.
So I would really support, this is a very personal thing, but I would support almost any measure the government sought to put in place to control the spread of this virus, because we've seen in China and in Hong Kong that when they have taken more drastic measures, the results have actually been pretty decent.
Containment is a way, is slowing down the spread of the virus. Being sensible about things like mass gatherings and what have you. And as somebody who is asthmatic, that would be great. We've got issues here. There's the St. Patrick's Day parade, which is due to take place next week, which is hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people on the streets of Dublin, which seems, insane to me, because, while the amount of cases here in Ireland right now is quite low, and I think it's similar in the UK. When you look at how it's spread in Italy, why would it be any different here or there or in the United States or any country which is going to be affected by this virus? And it seems to be worldwide. There was a brilliant video which I watched last night. The CEO of the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, a guy called Dr. Richard Hatchett, talked to Channel 4 News about the virus, about the spread, about what governments need to do and how people need to react to it. He says it is the scariest outbreak he's dealt with in his 20-year career. I will put a link to that video. It's 20 minutes long. I know in this world of short attention spans, and I'm guilty of that. When I see a YouTube video that's more than like 2 minutes long, I'm like, oh, fuck that. Give me the payoff in 120 seconds or less. This is really, really well worth watching, because I do think it is something that we all have to deal with, and you're absolutely right. The majority of people are going to be probably fine if they contract it, if they're, healthy and of a certain age. But, if you've got elderly parents, or if you've got anybody in your family who is prone to illness or immunosuppressed or whatever it might be, you have a responsibility to them and also everyone else in society as well. And it's unfortunate. There's been, some really unpleasant connotations involved in this thing as well. I got a DM from our friend Jason from Humans of the Arsenal.
Oh, yeah.
So Jason is an Australian of Filipino descent who was at the Emirates on Saturday to watch Arsenal versus West Ham, and was called coronavirus by some people, which is really unfortunate and really unpleasant, and obviously completely unacceptable. That this isn't just something that is Chinese or whatever it is. This is something that we're all going to have to deal with, and we all have to be vigilant, and we all have to be aware, and we all have to be sensible. And if that comes at the expense of not being able to go to football matches for a couple of weeks or a couple of months or whatever it might be, then that's the way it's got to be.
Yeah, it's a small price to pay in context. And I saw that video as well, and there's nothing more frightening than a scientist dispassionately relating their opinion about something.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, no, absolutely. And, in an era where news and facts and science and knowledge are being derided constantly as fake or whatever it might be, just fucking watch this. Watch this. This is cold, hard, scientific fact. And let that inform you, and not fucking idiots going to Costco and buying 60 toilet rolls,
Yeah, that's really not the issue. I mean, funnily enough, the whole thing makes me think of Arsene Wenger, bizarrely, because, I remember him saying we live in an age where kind of expertise isn't really trusted, and it feels particularly pertinent at the moment. But yeah, I would just say for people who might be listening thinking this is a load of fuss over nothing, all I can say is I have been in that place with this. I've been through that and thought the same thing. And as soon as you understand or think about the repercussions, I don't think that's a sustainable approach. I think that we all need to be super aware and do basically what we're told, which it's never fun, but that's the way it has to be.
Look, the amount of people who died in Italy has gone up by 133 in one day. It's 133 people who are dead because of this virus, and it's obviously far more advanced in Italy than it is here and in other places in the world. But as I said, what makes us special, or what makes us unique, we're just as susceptible to this thing as everybody in Italy is. So look at the measures that are being put in place there and do them early, because, what looks maybe extreme now, in a few weeks' time will probably look like the height of common sense. So that's why I really think here in Ireland, the government, we don't have a government, unfortunately, at the moment, because we've had an election and we haven't been able to form a government. But the people who are there right now have a responsibility to, to this country and to all other countries, because, there are people who are going to fly into Ireland for St. Patrick's Day, and there's a mass gathering of hundreds of thousands of people, and then they're going to fly home. You don't just have a local responsibility, you have, a social responsibility to the people in your own country, but to people in other countries, because that's how this thing will spread. And call it off. We can all stay home and drink green beer and have a grand time that way. But don't put people at risk for no good reason.
No, I completely agree. And people say, "Oh, it's just another cold, just another flu." It is. These numbers are all saying that it's more lethal than, significantly, multiple times more lethal than your standard flu. So it is deadly serious, and I hope they get a grip on it, because a few weeks of Premier League football would be a small price to pay for what might follow. And actually, if it's not controlled at this stage, there won't be Euros, there won't be a lot of stuff. So, yeah, fingers crossed they can get a handle on it very soon.
Okay, we're going to have one last question here.
Right.
And it comes from here it is, Simon Siebert. Who's that? Simon C. Siebert. And he says, morning guys, I don't think we've had any predictions from you for the last chunk of league games this season. Where do you think we will end up? So it's time to get out the Predictatron and do our Premier League predictions between now and the end of the season. So I'm going to write them down and keep track of them as I always do. I definitely don't always lose these. So
are we just doing Arsenal?
Yeah, we're just doing Arsenal because it's not, there have been times where we've looked at the other teams.
There's too many teams.
And thought, we can judge our results based on them. But I think for simplicity's sake, we are going to do it just from an Arsenal point of view. That starts with Wednesday night. And it's Man City against Arsenal. What is your prediction for that one?
I think Arsenal will lose that game. Because if you didn't get that from what I said earlier.
I also think Arsenal will lose that game. Okay, next up, we've got Brighton away.
I think Arsenal will win that game.
Okay, let me put the things in the right things here. I also think that we will win that game. We've a postponed game against Southampton away at St. Mary's. It probably won't happen before some of the others, but we've got that one. So that's an away game at Southampton. How do you see it going?
I think they'll draw that game.
I'm going to take a win for that one because I think somehow we're overdue some payback for the existence of Shane Long. So
sure, that was the existence of Shane Long's the main factor of me going for a draw.
Yeah,
I imagine he'll somehow conjure a goal.
Okay, Norwich at home.
I think I've got to say Arsenal win there.
Got to say an Arsenal win there. Okay, Wolves away.
Yes,
this is very interesting because we've got Wolves and Leicester right after each other, just as we did last season too.
Well, and then Spurs. I mean, this little run will determine our league finishing position to a large extent. Oh, that's all right. The pressure's off that. We don't have to beat them now. They lost a game.
Yeah.
Okay, Wolves away. It's not somewhere we conventionally do well, is it? I think a loss. Sorry.
I'm going to go for a draw there. I'm going to go for a draw. We've got Leicester at home then.
I think Arsenal will win that.
Yeah, the wheels have kind of come off a bit for Leicester, haven't they?
Slightly, yeah.
After Brendan Rodgers got a new contract.
Do you think Arsenal will win?
I think we're going to draw that one. I think
I was torn between the two.
North London derby at the new White Hart Lane against.
I think Arsenal will win.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a win there too. I just have a feeling about that one.
Yeah, same. It's got landmark Arteta win all over it, that one for me.
Liverpool at home. The game that we all looked at and thought we're going to end their unbeaten run, but it's already been ended. Thank you, Watford. Liverpool should be champions by then. They will be champions by then, which is why I'm going for a draw from an Arsenal point.
I'm going to go for a draw as well. I just think, now they don't have the unbeaten thing to preserve. They'll be champions.
Could still be in Europe.
Well, yeah. I mean, we'll see what happens with Atletico, but yeah, I think draw.
Okay. Villa away.
Ooh.
The Jack Grealish... what's that thing you do?
Memorial Trophy.
No. The audition, the Jack Grealish audition.
I think they're going to be right in the mix, aren't they?
Going to be scrapping.
I'm going to say a draw.
I'm going for a win against Villa. I think Grealish will score twice, but Aubameyang will score a hat-trick, and Arsenal will win that one. And on the final day of the season, are our cojones big enough to beat Watford?
Possibly relegate Watford, seeing what happens. I think... Well, Arsenal win. I mean, it depends on if there's lots to play for. I think Arsenal will win on the final day. I
also think so. So you have got...
How many points have I got?
You've got 3, 4, 7, 10, 13, 14, 15, 18.
Okay.
And I've got...
From a possible how many?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 30. Jesus, why did I count that? There's 10 games.
Okay.
So 18 from 30. And I've got 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 14, 15. I've got 21 from 30.
I mean, what I would say immediately off the bat is looking at those fixtures, I don't think it's an easy run-in.
No.
There are some tricky games in there. You know, that run of Sheffield, what is it? Sorry? Wolves, Leicester, Spurs, Liverpool. You know, that's juicy, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got us coming through that run unbeaten. I've obviously had like some good coffee this morning. I'm feeling good about my team, even though I just saw them play against West Ham. There's the eternal optimist in me.
Well, they've got that performance out the way now. They're flying now.
Yeah. We're not losing games, really, you know. I say that ahead of a game against Man City, but like, you know, we
the
are...
only unbeaten team in the league in 2020, I believe.
Calendar year champions, come on! Yes. We are the best.
And so what do you reckon? So if you had 21 points...
That would be 61 points. And you would have us on 58 points. So based on last season's Premier League... I
don't think either of those are going to be enough for Champions League, that's for sure.
No, I don't think so. We would have to go 30 for 30, I think, to get to the Champions League places. I mean, we finished on 70 points last season. 58. We were fifth. Man United 6th on 61 and Wolves 7th on 57 points. It should be enough to get us Europa League football, though.
Yeah. That's what it feels like. That's what it feels like. But we shall see. Maybe we'll beat Man City on Wednesday and all our expectations will be subverted.
Right, well look, let's see what happens then on Wednesday night. We will have another podcast later in the week. We're not quite sure yet what's going to happen, whether it's going to be an Arsecast Extra or a late Arsecast Extra or regular on Friday, but in an extra style-y. We will have to wait and see. But join us for that, whatever it is. Please wash your hands as much as possible. Stay safe, stay well, and thanks for listening as always.
Bye-bye.